Okay, it has happened. The button pressing has commenced. And here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. If you happen to be new, let me say hello, welcome, nice to meet you. And if you're not new, what's up? What is going on? How is everyone doing? I know those questions, what's going on? How are we doing? They're so friggin' loaded right now. How do you even answer them? That's why I really am feeling like maybe this week is a good week for a little bit more of an old-time check-in. Long-time listeners might remember I used to use these intros to have a little bit more of like a check-in with listeners than I sometimes do these days. Well, I'm feeling like today's a day for a check-in, and I'm definitely feeling more confident about doing that because I'm pretty sure that today's guest, Simon Goss, will not mind. And I will tell you why I think Simon won't mind in just a little bit. But first, I have been really feeling a need to try to share with other yoga people out there, yoga teachers out there, because it just seems like we've all retreated into these kind of silos. I don't really know what's going on so much. If you remember in the summer, there was this moment where everybody was feeling very optimistic and there was this sudden surge of promotion for in-person retreats, and I think they've played out. I think a lot of people have managed to make those things that they planned happen. And I guess some people have some things planned, but there's so much hesitancy about planning anything because there's still no indications of like we're in the clear in any kind of way or whatever, you know? And it just seems like it's hard to promote anything because it almost inherently becomes political if you're not mentioning vaccination status or whatever. So it seems like everybody's just like, oh, shit. And still just in sort of holding patterns or doing things on smaller scale, like I've been talking about on the show some. I think people are finding ways to do things in more local and smaller ways than they might have been in the past, or just sort of carefully curating small events here or there, but nobody's just like opening back up. Like, here's my touring schedule. I guess some people have some touring schedule that they planned for 2022, but everybody's still really unclear about, one, what the restrictions are going to be. Like, I think a lot of the restrictions are lifting and people are feeling more comfortable around that. However, at the same time, I think that there's just a lot of, I don't know, psychological and emotional and stuff that people are all working through. I know one friend I spoke to who has returned to in-person teaching was just telling me how stressful and not very fun it was. She feels compelled to do it, and I understand, like, it does feel like you're serving an important role. Like I said weeks and weeks ago, if you remember that, I felt that sometimes as a yoga teacher, your role was to sort of be the first one, say, I'll go first. I will put myself into this slightly uncomfortable place so that we can all heal together or whatever it is, you know? And I think there is something powerful and meaningful to that. But it wasn't a big kumbaya come back together like we were all hoping for or something. It's so confusing still, and I've even just seen people around me in my immediate sphere really having trouble working through this current stage that we're in, where nobody seems to know, are we letting people back into our houses again? Are we not letting people back in our houses? A lot of us have decided it's okay. Some people are not okay with it, and it's just people are having to have those conversations again, and it's all so, again, just still very confusing. And I wish I had more clarity around it, but I don't. However, it isn't the whole story. Last week I was asking for W's, remember? I was like, I don't want to just hear about the doom. And I don't think that was full doom just now. That was just like an honest assessment of our current state of confusion. Not necessarily doom, but I have also been finding small wins, W's, wherever I can. And I did hear from a few people, and it seemed to me that all of the W's had a certain characteristic to them, which is that they were very much on a personal or interpersonal level. It wasn't a W like, I managed to solve the problem of COVID, or managed to convince whoever of whatever, or managed to understand why, or whatever, anything like that. It was mostly just, I managed to find beauty in this moment of life that I was experiencing, or this incredible synchronicity happened that made me feel more in touch, or there was a sense of knowing that came from within and it communicated this to me, and I feel a new sense of direction. Like, those are the W's. And those are worth everything in a way to me right now. That is where we have some power in the matter. And for me, personally, some of those W's have just been happening on small little ways where it just seems like if I can relax myself and not try to control what's happening and just really be present, something opens up, and it almost feels like there's like a little bit of a lighted path in front of me to follow. But I can't see very far down it. It's not like the lighted path is like a 5-year plan. The lighted path is like, turn that way instead of that way. You know what I mean? It's not like long term, but clear little senses of being with a flow of life. Ooh, that sounds risky. I guess I can talk about that a little bit, maybe on the other side of today's talk. I'll share what happened when I went to the Kenny Beats live show in New York City yesterday. I had a lot of these little things happen for myself, and I can share some of them with you, some small W's there. But what I got from the people who shared their W's with me was the same thing, that where they are happening most is within ourselves, more so than in these external identifications of who or what we are supposed to be. But as I mentioned, I don't think that today's guest, Simon Goss, will mind that I am waxing this way, because Simon is a listener of the show, and today's episode is what I like to call a wild card episode. Some of you might remember I've done this before, where out of nowhere, just on a whim, I will jump into a call and bring someone who listens to the show on. And it's always fun for me because I have this deep curiosity to know who you are out there. And I'm not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to share your actual numbers, because I don't know, there's some stupid baked in idea that you're supposed to like project an image of success. So sometimes you don't want to tell people your actual numbers, because then they'll realize you're actually not as big as you are or whatever. But who fucking cares? We figured out that there's about 4,000 of you. There's about 4,000 of you around the world who listen to this show on a regular every week as a regular part of your lives. And, if you think about the millions of people on the planet, there's 4,000 of you who have connected to this for whatever reason and choose to listen to it regularly. And there's lots of other people, I'm sure, who've listened to an episode or some episodes but don't listen regular, I'm sure. But I'm talking about people who listen every week. And some of you have actually listened since the beginning. And if that's you, you are so the real ones. And I fucking love you. And thank you for sticking around all these years with me. But I've often wondered, who are these 4,000 people? And sometimes I think I have an idea of who they are, and then I'm wrong about it. And when I was traveling around the world for that couple of years before the pandemic happened, I would meet people. They'd show up to the workshop and say, I listen to the show every week. And I'd be like, oh my God, really? And never did they meet my idea of who I thought was listening to the show. So what happened with Simon is Simon emailed me. And he said, I listened to the show and I was wondering if I could pick your brain on a couple things about podcasting. And just, I was wondering if I could ask you a couple questions. And frankly, I mentioned Kenny Beats, which I'll tell you about on the other side, but Kenny Beats has this huge following of young producers who are really into what he's doing. And I had been watching this stream that he did, and some viewer of his had sent him a random message asking him if he could do something, and he just randomly did it and hooked this person up out of nowhere. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. So when Simon emailed me, I was like, totally, sure, man, call me. And I gave him my number. So he called me and we were talking, and I just asked him a question because I wanted to know where he was coming from. And within 2 minutes, I said, wait a second. Why don't we just do this for the show? And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I think it'll be fun. Listen, let's hang up right now. I'm going to send you a link, schedule some time. We'll jump on a call and we'll get to know each other together on the show. It'll be fun. And that is what you are going to hear today. And so it was a process of discovery for me in this conversation of getting to know Simon some and coming to understand why he connects with the show. And I think, as is generally the case when I get a chance to talk with someone who listens, it becomes clear at some point for one reason or another why. A lot of times I just think it has to do with people have experiences with yoga that affect them, that they have a deep passion around, and yoga is important to them. And so there's a certain inquiry that comes along with that. And I have that. And so I explore it on this show, and I think people connect with that. They're like, yes, I have that inquiry in me too. And then I think there's other subtler reasons why some people connect with me personally. And it was fun to flesh that out with Simon. And I'm really glad to share it with you today. Real quick before we get to that, though, let me check here to see if there was anything else that I was supposed to mention. Oh, shit, there is teacher training. That's a big thing, actually. It's kind of one of my W's. It's a personal W for me, because if you've been listening to this show for a long time, you know I have been banging my head against the wall of teacher training models that we've been using and really fretting over it and really uncomfortable, having done teacher trainings with 200-hour formats for many years. When I had the center, I just became so jaded over the whole thing and about Yoga Alliance. And I came to a new place about it. I've gotten a new mindset around it. And I do think that I may start doing a teacher training again in a way that feels right to me and represents the way I think a honest offering with that title might be. So that's a longer conversation, and I think I've already rambled on enough for today. So we'll be coming back to that. Actually, next week, that actually will be a perfect opportunity to talk about it. Okay, so next week, we'll continue a little bit more about this new idea I have about teacher training and how for it to not totally suck beyond all words. So if you're curious about that, next week we'll talk about that. Let me see. Other than that, let me just mention that if you did want to connect with me in ways other than just listening to this show, I do have weekly online classes that happen live that you can watch on replay when you can't come there live. I also have a weekly teachers meeting if you want to sit and talk with other teachers and relate and connect. We do that. I also have a 12-hour online workshop and some on-demand practice videos, or there is a very extensive archive to this show if you want to become a premium subscriber. All of my stuff, including just a way to send me a note if you want, everything can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, I think that is plenty good. I will touch base with you on Kenny Beats and on church. I didn't forget. If you were here last week, we went to church. I'll tell you about what happened at church too, if you want on the other side. But I think for now, let's go ahead and get to meet a fellow listener and listen to this conversation that I had with Simon Goss. Hello?
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Simon, I got you.
You got me. How are you?
I'm doing okay. All things considered, how about you?
I'm doing well.
Did I psych you out here, getting to the right place? Were you at a different link or something?
Yeah, I don't know if I was looking for it, but I don't know if I had the link. I was on my phone and I was on the computer and trying to figure out what the best source was going to be. But,
all right, well, we made it happen. We're here.
Yes, we did.
We're here. How are you doing? You okay? How was your day?
It's been good. Yeah, it's a good day. Ran some errands. I live in an area where I can get some walking in to do a bunch of things, actually. Kind of like old school when I was a kid, hit the bank if I want to go to Starbucks, market, what have you. So yeah, I went for a walk with the dog and he got his couple miles in and I got some exercise in and ran my errands. And it's been a good day. Got the kids off to school and things are well.
Very cool. Well, I'm really glad to get a chance to speak with you. We spoke for just a few moments, a couple of weeks back. And it's fun for me because, I don't know, you're somebody who listens to this show. And you mentioned in an email that you sent me, I said something about you in an intro. Did you send me an email? Did I read it? Forgive me. I tried to go back and find it and I couldn't find it. Can you remind me? Did I mention you in an intro or something?
Well, no. Well, you recognized your listen, your supporters, right? That.
You were a premium subscriber and I gave you a shout out.
You gave me a shout out, and I was riding down the street, and it's funny because whenever I listen and I hear the people you shout out, I'm like, oh, I might hear my name one day. And and this was the weird thing because I was a little behind in listening to podcasts, right? And so I actually pulled it up from my phone and it took me back to maybe, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 episodes before that day, which happened to be on a Monday, but it was like 4 or 5 episodes before. So I mean, how ironic that was the episode. Not that I wouldn't have heard it.
See, you would have missed it if you had listened to the most recent. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. Not that, and I probably would have heard it at some point, but that particular day, I'm driving and I hear my name, Simon Goss, and I'm like,
yeah, nice.
My wife, and I'm like a big kid in a lot of ways and stuff like that. So I'll call her up and tell her what I heard. I played it for my daughter when I picked her up from school. And well, look at me like, oh my God, my dad's crazy.
That's awesome. Well, I love that. And I love that you also emailed me and you wanted to pick my brain about some stuff. And we started to do that. And I just thought, wow, we should just do this on the podcast. And so here we are. So we're on the podcast together, which is very fun for me. And I'm hopefully for you too. You listen to the show regular. So now you get to be on the show. That's cool, right?
Yeah. I was actually listening to you when I was walking my boy, and I about 40 minutes I was listening to I I guess the episode that was just released, Living Under a Broken Model with Mike Huggins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool. So yeah, it's good to be here.
Very cool. Very cool. Also, for me, it's very funny. And I want to share this with you. Like just now, like maybe an hour ago, I was getting ready to talk to you. So, you know, I found like you have a website with like a blog there.
Yes.
Basically just like a Zoom link to your classes, right?
Yes.
and there's a picture of you there.
Uh-huh.
And I was like struck because I don't know, you have glasses similar to mine, you have tattoos, you have like a haircut that's so similar. And I just thought, oh my God, it's like some kind of cosmic clan or something that we're part of. However, the clan does transcend some things, right? We have some different skin tone and very different backgrounds, like very different backgrounds.
Yes. But I resonated with you from like, and I don't even know how I found your podcast. I don't even know, because I don't think I had listened to podcasts prior to then when I found you maybe 3 years ago, close to 4. But I don't know. I just resonated with the things you spoke about. And I think I told you on the phone, just, you know, your sensitivity, you know, you're a girl dad. You know, I've got 3 girls. And I don't know. Just, I like people that are, I think, you know, like-minded, but different at the same time. And I just enjoy what you bring to the table. Appreciate it a lot.
Well, that makes me feel good to hear. And I do think it's kind of striking to me, though, like because I sometimes wonder, I grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Cal State Northridge. So I was in the Valley back in the 80s. You know, I was a football guy. So from the 82 to 87, I was holding it down and back in the gag me with a spoon, you know, Valley.
Oh my God. That's why we have that thing. We have an LA thing then.
Exactly.
See?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Yes. Valley girl. The Valley girl, right?
Exactly. And
I went to El Camino Real High School.
I had played with some guys. So I played football at Northridge. So I went, you know, a couple of my teammates went to El Camino Real and, you know, all around Granada Hills. And I was post John Elway days, you know, a few years after him. So a buddy of mine that I actually, Eric Davis, he was actually on the team with John Elway, you know, big quarterback guy. You probably know that name.
Yes, there was a player. There was a football player came out of El Camino Real. It was my year. Jamal Anderson.
Okay, not familiar with that name.
He made it to the big leagues and then like blew his knee out in a big game. I remember watching it. Oh, crazy!
Right? Yeah. So and that was back. Well, you remember the Valley was like, it was not much I mean, you know, it was quiet.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of growth. You know, so in the 80s, I mean, I had a buddy I had friends in the Glory Hills and Thousand Oaks. So you make the drive there, and it was like nothing off the freeway. Now you make that drive, and it's dealerships and homes and master plan communities. It's been a while since I've been out there, but yeah, I braved those 114 degree summers.
All right, so you're a football player in the Valley in the 80s.
In the 80s.
You go to Cal State Northridge, you said?
Out of Compton High.
Compton. Yeah. Oh, shit.
Compton High. Yeah, I'm a Compton boy. You know, so my parents both, you know, graduated high school from Compton High, 59 for my dad and 1961 for my mom. And dad played football. I wanted to follow in dad's shoes. Mom wanted us to be bused to Gardena High School, which would have been about, 20-minute bus ride. And we got bused to the junior high because she didn't want us to go to the junior high that she went to. Just thought we would get it. My mom was a teacher, instructional aide in special ed. So, you know, she had her reasons. But after getting bused to junior high, we loved it, had a great experience. But I wanted to follow in dad's shoes. So I had to kind of scratch and claw to make that happen. And my dad was, you know, pretty much on my side, and we went out. That's where I went. But yeah, I got recruited in 1982 to Northridge, And my positional coach that coached me is actually still coaching. Then he's at Washington State now. He's the defensive back coach, but he's been in the game since about 1981. But right. Yeah, it was a good time out there.
All right. So what happens with your football direction then when you get to school?
There's hundreds, thousands of guys coming out, it wasn't always a dream of mine to play at the next level. My life was so different back then, and, discipline in a lot of ways, and then lack of discipline in some other ways. And, so that didn't pan out. And, I stuck around school took off a semester, turned into a second semester. My brother was in the Army at the time. I just needed to get away and get some focus, redirect, clean my life up in some ways that, I was kind of lagging behind, had developed some bad habits. And I went into the Marine Corps, and it was like the best thing that I could have done just to get away. I tell parents that now, the military it's like an extended college. It's not like a graduate course, and I went to college first, but to go into the Corps and, go to Japan for a year. I know you've spent some time over in Japan. I didn't go to Tokyo, but I was in Okinawa and, was a part of the Desert Shield, Desert Storm operation. So didn't go, wasn't off in the front lines, but just being there, separated from your family, it was an interesting experience. But I got out and actually went back to school and finished up a few classes when I got back from Saudi Arabia, and opted to get out after 4 years. But it was
why did you choose to leave the military?
I didn't go in there to do it for a career. Like I said, I needed to just get away and refocus, and that's what it was for me. It was a good time, but it was just.
That's really. I'm sorry to laugh, but you're like, I went into the Marines for 4 years. It was a good time. Like, Marines sounds like it would be tough. Like doesn't sound like a vacation to go into the Marines for 4 years.
Put it like this.
To be in a Desert Storm operation, even if you weren't on the front line, it seems like. That's like work. I guess you said that you were like dealing with shit, and it was a way to have discipline. That makes sense to me.
Exactly. A different form, and being an athlete, you got to have a different level, a certain level of discipline, of course, work ethic. So, the training that I did in the Marine Corps, to be honest, not that it was a joke or super easy, it's challenging, but, playing Pop Warner football for 6 years, high school for 3 years, 4 years of college, there was nothing they can do to me there. And, and that was back when, prior to me going in, guys could get in your face and pretty much, so basically like this, if somebody wants you to do 50 push-ups and you can only do 3, how are you going to get another 47 out of them? If you can only do 3, you can only do 3. So it's a lot of mental stuff. And, there's a method to the madness, right? If you're ever in a combat situation, granted, the enemy, the opposing force, they're not going to be nice to you. So all that stuff is just meant to toughen you up. But when you go in later, right? So if you go in the military at 17 if your parents signed for you to go in, or 18, your outlook is much different when you go in at 24.
Right?
Not that you're a rebel and you can't be told what to do, but you understand there's a method to the madness, right? And after playing sports for those, that number of years, I played with some coaches that, probably couldn't coach today because they couldn't do the things that coaches got away with back then. Right. And it was okay with your parents because they know that you were being made of sorts, right? And so you were going to come home. It kept you out of trouble. You were going to sleep well. 1 year, my mom, we don't want to play football this year. And she's like, get in the car. We're going to practice. So there was no we don't want to do something. She was going to make sure you stayed busy year round. Football, basketball, baseball. Soccer wasn't a thing when I was growing up, but you always had something to do. So that level of discipline in that way, work ethic that way, I was very disciplined. Some of the other bad habits that I, acquired, put it like this. When you start experimenting, right, without getting into detail, and I feel as though it doesn't really matter what you experiment with. If you are, if you enjoy what you enjoy, it doesn't really matter what it is, right? You tend to take things maybe to a different extreme, right? And it doesn't really matter what the choice is, right? Yeah. If that's what you enjoy, it could be vegging out on, I mean, this wouldn't be my thing, vegging out on a whole day of TV, but example, if you've got some habits, you kind of just put forth an effort in doing what you're doing. So for me, it was just a means to an end, just to get away and refocus and get away from the hustle and the bustle, to see something different, to regain a different level of discipline. And so that's what it achieved for me. And it was time to move on. But it was, because not everyone is going to go there and put in a 20, 30-year career, but it was good. And unless you're in an infantry unit where you're out in the bush, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't realize you go into the military, and whatever especially now, whatever 9 to 5 job you could do on the outside, you could do that same thing there. So I would go to work, I'd leave my uniform at work, I'd leave Camp Pendleton, and I'd drive to, South Orange County, and I was a civilian. I had a 9 to 5 job. And I'd do the same thing the next day. And then weekends were mine. But, if you're living on base, it's a different story. But I was in a situation where, when I was married, I lived off base. So it was pretty cool, and it wasn't like you were, we didn't go away for weeks on end for training. In my unit, I was a photolithographer, process camera operator. So basically, I majored in radio, TV, and film in school. So I thought it was going to be something like that. Not even close. And now it's all digital. So, they will prepare you to get into print media with like 4 or 5 color jobs. When I was in, it was more black and white. We would print, letterhead and, the Marine Corps ball and the General's ball, different things like that. But basically you would come in and say, I need to put together a brochure. We would take that, shoot it, plate it, run it, do all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you were doing graphic design in the Marines.
Exactly.
Old school, though, before digital graphic
Before
design.
digital, yeah. So I can imagine what the operation looks like now.
It'd be a lot easier. You just be on a laptop.
Exactly.
You have an iPhone and a laptop, that's all.
Right. And it was pretty cool. And, and being in Okinawa, Japan, I worked for a unit, and these guys were had been in the Marine Corps, close to 30 years. And so they were pretty laid back guys. As a matter of fact, and I still honor this today, my boss at the time always gave us our birthdays off. So that was in 1989. Your birthday was off. And I have not worked a birthday, Jay, since 1988. I make a big deal out of that. So I tell people, take your birthday. Oh, it's just another day. And I'm like, my thing is like, hey, let me talk to your mom. Let me ask your mom, is your birthday just another day?
I am one of those people who say that. I say, it's just every day is miraculous. The day that marks the day I was born isn't necessarily more miraculous than another day. But you make a very convincing case, because when you call into my mom into question, then you really bring it home. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just something I've always. So I haven't worked a birthday. Usually I take vacation around my birthday. It's kind of like my little selfish, guilty pleasure, if you want to call it. But that's what I do. My kids are usually out of school right before then. So birthdays are vacations for me. But I make a big deal out of it. And I always say, the government gave me my birthday off. I'm not working again. And so you plan it with your boss and you say, hey, my birthday's coming up in 6 months. I met one person since 1989, that shares their birthday with someone else. I'm pretty sure there's other people, of course, in an office place that share the same birthday. I just haven't met them. So, unless you have a conflict, take your day off.
I hear you. That's beautiful. I like that. All right. But when you're done and you decide, okay, I've got what I need to get from the military, and you're leaving, what's your plan then?
Oh, wow. I bounced around to a few different jobs. I delivered water. I did a couple other things. And then, believe it or not, I actually had a massage. I went through a divorce. It was horrific. Not horrific, just mentally, it was horrific. And so it was like one of the most challenging times of my life. It just felt like a failure, because my dad passed away 4 years ago. And so my parents would have been, it was like 54, 55 years. And, it was back in the days where people just didn't divorce. Even if they were having some complications, you just kind of stuck it out, And of course, no marriage is perfect, as you know, but, Yeah, I went through a divorce and just kind of went through some soul searching. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And so I had a massage and it touched me in such a way. And I've always liked touch, like giving shoulder massages and what have you to my friends. And I had a massage and literally I asked my therapist where they went to school. And then 2 weeks later, I started massage school. And it was
all right. So wait a second. What happened in this massage that was this pivotal moment?
It was just, I don't know. It just was the healing of touch just touched me. I was actually doing some personal training because that was my, being an athlete. I was personal training at a health spa there, and they had leased the space to a chiropractor, and he had a few therapists there. And they had like some cubicles set up and, so it's not like you was in this enclosed room. I don't remember if it had a roof on it. I don't think, because I think it was more of a cubicle with no roof because you had that tall roof of the facility. And yeah, it just was, I don't know, it was just powerful.
Did you get emotional? Did you see stuff or just like, oh, that felt good, I want to be a massage therapist?
It just felt very comforting. And it just felt like there was something, I don't know. Obviously, I felt there was a level of comfort that I could provide for people having felt that level of comfort. Not that I went into the massage broken, but I had never had a massage ever. I didn't grow up. I never had a manicure and a pedicure. I love all that stuff. Now I love spa days.
But that's funny because you're from Compton and you're a football player and you were in the Marines.
Yeah.
And so you've never had a massage or a manicure. That's funny. In the 80s, my dad used to get them. And I remember he had me come with him and get one time when I was like a kid. Like, but that's such a funny thing because that's not what I think's interesting about it is there's like a kind of like what it is to be a man thing that I think we grew up with in Los Angeles, whether it was on your side of the hill or my side of the hill.
Right. Well, and I think also where if my mom had taken me to her manicure appointment or taking me to get a manicure or pedicure, and, back in the 80s, it's much different now in athletics, right? Where you have, massage therapy. I mean, these guys are spoiled now, so they get all that stuff, you go to the training room if you have an injury and you're iced and you have heat or, you get in a whirlpool, that's what it was like back then. But now it's a whole different realm.
Yeah. Now they'll do whatever they can get an edge with, Reiki, whatever they can get.
Cryotherapy, all that stuff. I mean, the big programs. So I don't know. I've always been open to try different things. And so when I had that massage, it was something about it. And I started school 2 weeks later and, I'm still doing massage therapy today. And I took a break. I got into some other things just because around 9/11 when things exploded and the world changed, like the world's changed from COVID, people were afraid to go outside, let alone go get a massage. People were glued to the TV, listening to all the coverage. And but but in massage was much different then. It wasn't. Now for a lot of people, it is a way of life. It's not something you do as a luxury. I worked at a spa where 65% of the guests were coming into the facility for the first time. 65%.
Yeah.
Massage was like 65%.
I remember I had a job in 1995 at a massage therapy spa of sorts. I was sort of a glorified towel boy who like greeted people and brought them to this waiting room and got them like warm cider while they waited to go into their massage rooms and stuff. And then did like a whole shitload of laundry. And I just remember like it was a thriving place. Like, but like you said, it was always people coming in. Like my sister is a medical massage therapist. And that's a little bit different. Like those people are like getting like prescribed it or whatever.
Exactly. Probably 15, 20-minute services, not necessarily an hour, hour and a half, 2-hour services, but more like what you would receive at a chiropractic office where, you've got an injury. And so you're treating that area, not necessarily going in for therapeutic relaxation, type of services. But,
all right. So you're doing massage therapy. When does yoga become a thing for you?
Oh, yoga became a thing, again, these paradigm shifts. So when 9/11 happened and things shut down, this is during my single days after I had divorced after like just shy of 8 years. I always had skills to cut hair. It's what I did as a kid. I would go to the barber shop and come home and clean up my own haircut. Not that I hated the haircut, but it was like never like exactly the way I wanted it. So I just developed skills to cut my own hair. And then I was a team barber, to the black guys on the team when I was in college, which was only like 9 of us. And everyone came to me for haircuts. And something I wanted to do was go to barber school, and, lack of whatever reason, I didn't do it. And I had the GI Bill, which I left a ton of money on the table. So I went to beauty college to supplement my income, and then just fell in love with it. And then at one time I was doing both. I was working at a salon in the city, and I was downtown Fullerton, which is a small, quaint little, area. And there was a yoga studio, a Bikram studio. And I was like, Bikram yoga? What is that? I'm like, so I went back to work, told some of my colleagues, I'm going to go check out this yoga class. And the next day we went to class, and a woman not practicing had a heart attack in the locker room.
What?
And yeah, she had a heart
attack. The first
attack.
time you ever went, someone had a heart attack in the locker room?
Not in class, and not
in the locker room still.
It was before class.
Okay.
It was before class.
So it wasn't like a causal thing where like you felt like the class caused a heart attack,
right.
But still.
No, it was before class, and so the owner at the time was teaching quite a bit, and he came out and was just like, "I'm going to cancel class the rest of the day." So long story short, I ended up going back to class a couple of days later and just fell in love with it from day one. And it maybe was partly because the former athlete in me that loved, and not like I was like a guy that like glorified heat, but, I don't know. It's just something about everything that I experienced. It was like, okay, I signed up and did a 2-week unlimited. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, at that time, it was like $99 a month for a membership. And I never would have paid $99 to be a gym member because I was a gym guy. I mean, I joined the gym when I was 18, and I was a gym, and I still continued to work out at the gym after I found yoga for about, and actually I haven't worked out with weights. My middle daughter is 11 in about 11 years. And so from the time I was 17, well, actually 9 years old when I was working out in the neighborhood, buddies had gyms. 9 years old to 11 years ago, and I'm 57 now, I was a gym rat and like a totally different person, about 30 pounds heavier than what I am right now, and just on a whole different level. But the yoga, it was like having that massage. It was something about it that resonated with me. And I did the $99. I was still going to the gym 5 days a week, 2 days of yoga. Then eventually it was like one less day of the gym, one more day of yoga. And then I was like 5 days of yoga and 2 days in the gym. And then finally I was like, I'm done. So that's how I found yoga. And I think I told you when we spoke briefly, the studio owner at the time, it said, I think the challenge sometimes that athletes have, they're used to that, always on the grind type of a workout, pushing, muscling through everything. And I just gotten to a point in my life where it felt like, I'm just tired of all that stuff. I'm ready to relinquish all that control and then find a little bit more grace and ease into what I do. And the yoga just spoke to me, and Bikram got that set routine, and I did it for 4 years. I mean, I loved it, but I wanted to go to training actually, but I just couldn't. It couldn't justify. It was going to cost me about $10,000.
I know that training was ridiculously expensive.
Crazy. Yeah,
and he was crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And fucked up.
I saw a little bit of the documentary. I mean, and some of my colleagues, right? They went through. So that was when the school was still in LA. Yeah. And I actually did I get a chance to go there and take a class? I don't remember if I did. I wanted to. I don't think I ever did. And then he moved there and went to Hawaii and started bouncing around. But I have a friend of mine, we were trying to get there. She actually, so she's, husband's the provider and a couple of kids, so she could like afford to leave for 3 months and not work. So she actually went through the training in Hawaii with Bikram. So I have a few friends that I'm still friends with today that actually were a part of the trainings. I mean, there's a lot of people that got a lot out of it. I think you kind of just pick and choose what works for you. But, and I've heard you talk about Bikram and some other hot yoga stuff. For me, it was a time in my life where it made sense. And not to say I wouldn't go to a Bikram class still. I have a friend that loves to go to Bikram classes. At one point I realized that I could generate my own internal heat, and there's so much other asana out there. So I don't want to limit myself, and I don't knock that. I just don't want to limit myself to these particular poses, because I had gotten proficient, and not that I was trying to like wrap my leg behind my head. That's never been my thing. But I had gotten strong and proficient with what I was doing. And my nagging football injuries, I mean, I had horrible knees. I used to have to wrap my knees with ace bandages in high school. And then in college, I would do the ace bandage. I would do the knee brace. I mean, I couldn't even walk the last 3 or 4 games of the season after the game. Then I find yoga, and every knee issue, I never had a surgery. I have 0 knee problems. I can go for a 15-mile hike. I can go down. I mean, I'm a little sore after a hike the next couple of days, but outside of that, I run regularly, Jay. I'm doing 3-4 miles. I've been doing that for years. Wow. My always went away. So that's one of my joys that I receive from doing asana and meditation, is just, finding some more balance. And the days to where my back gets a little, because I know you have some back stuff.
Yeah.
You know how it is. You can go to bed and feel like on top of the world, and then wake up going, what the hell happened while I was sleeping? So I know what that's like. Yeah. To experience that. So whenever that happens to me, then I just take a couple of days off until it goes away. But I don't feel like I need to go out there and grind it out just because I need to do that.
Well, it's interesting because I am sort of a reverse of you. I never went to the gym at all in my whole life.
Right, I know that. Yes, right.
I only did yoga up until a few years ago. I'm turning 50 this coming year. And I started doing a little bit of this weight like training. Low bear, right, just because it's like I needed to balance it out. But it is about balancing it out. You seem to have done a lot of other things that were not about like mobility necessarily, or it was those activities that you described, like football and like what the military demands of you, like those physical activities, they require like a certain, I'm imagining, because I don't know it firsthand necessarily, but like a kind of a way of embodying yourself, or like in order to be effective at those things, you develop certain, strengths or skill set. Yeah. But with these other things like massage and yoga, these are kind of about like opening up like the soft underbelly or whatever it is.
That's the way it is.
I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because, to be out on, again, I was never in combat, but you got to be that kind of person if you're, just the fact that we were going to Saudi Arabia, I'm thinking we're going to get off a plane and bullets are flying, and it's nothing like that, right? You got so many people there and support. I mean, we were 150 miles from the border, but that didn't mean that you were like totally safe. I mean, there was a Scud missile that, it had to travel. So say for instance, it was launched at point A and it hit point C. We were at point B. Not to say it went over our heads, but we were in the middle. We were halfway. So it wasn't like you were like 100% safe no matter where you were. We stood watch. We dug fighting holes, bunkers. I remember what it was like when when the alarm sounded, and that was like, okay, there's danger out there. And I remember putting on our mop suits and the chemical suits and going into our bunkers.
Right, like that everything you're describing is a very like different somatic experience than doing it. But see, Bikram's a little bit hardcore, so I guess it's like a little bit more at home. There's like a certain kind of like war zone, potentially on depending on who your teacher is, I guess.
Totally.
Well, but you didn't stay. You didn't stay with Bikram. Did you do other stuff after Bikram?
I did, and so I ended up going through. I went through teacher training because I worked at Yoga Works for a while until, as you know, all the studios are closed down. But that's where I did my training. It just made sense. Prior to Bikram, I actually did a class at Yoga Works back in like 2001, something like that, with a client. And I enjoyed it, but I was a gym guy. So I didn't get out and bash yoga. I enjoyed it. Which is interesting because had I had someone introduce me to yoga back in the 80s when I was in college, I probably would have started practicing yoga. And I'm pretty sure I knew people that practice, but no one was like, hey, Simon, we're going to do some yoga, So I did this class at Yoga Works, liked it, but it wasn't like a Bikram experience where I was like, sign me up for 2 weeks unlimited. So when I couldn't make the Bikram thing work, the training, I looked into some other training and it was, in my budget to go to Yoga Works. So I did my 200-hour there. And
if you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of Jay Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.